Welcome to FARview, the podcast series of the Foundation for Auditing Research. In this podcast, we interview academics and professionals regarding the practical relevance of academic research in the field of auditing. The Foundation for Auditing Research is an autonomous institute focused on developing and disseminating scientific knowledge concerning audit quality in the Netherlands. FAR pursues these objectives by facilitating relevant and rigorous academic research through a unique collaboration between academia and audit practice.
Okay, dear listeners and viewers, today Lena Pieper is our guest in the podcast. She's doing a study on, what makes audit partners in the team successful. And I think in the meanwhile you have about 4 papers going on in that area.
That's correct.
So we're going to try to summarize that in a limited time period today. But maybe it's nice to say first something about yourself and about your team you're working with and how you got interested in auditing.
Yes, of course. So I'm Lena. I'm a PhD student at Maastricht University in the final year of my PhD. So I graduate next year. I also did my bachelor's and master in Maastricht, so I've actually been around there for quite some time. And that's also how I got interested in research, accounting, and auditing. So I'm actually trained as an accountant. I did my bachelor, master, all focused on accounting, did a bit of an internship in audit, and then decided, I don't really want to work in this environment yet. Mm-hmm. But I really like the general, what is accounting about, and it's not just black and white, so there's a lot of room for judgments, and it's all about information provision, and I find this a very fascinating environment to study. And then I met Anne van Stralen, who's now also one of my supervisors, and she told me about her research, and I got very interested, so I did a research master then as well, took some more empirical courses, so I really like statistics as well, which helps. And then I also met my second supervisor, Jerry Francis, and together with Anne and Jerry and Olaf Big from the Foundation for Auditing Research, now at University of Groningen, and Murray Barrick, we started this overall FAR project that I will talk about today.
Yeah. And you grew up in Germany, right?
I grew up in Germany, yeah.
Because there are many German students in Maastricht.
Many German students,
so is there a specific reason for that?
So for me, a big reason was, I wanted to study business, but I thought I want to study in English. So that's why back then, 10 years ago, there wasn't a lot of English programs in Germany. So I moved to Maastricht, and also just the teaching system in Maastricht, that you have small group classes, the PBL, the problem-based learning, and not these large-scale lectures, because most universities in Germany will have large-scale lectures with 500, 600 students. Mm. And so I really liked the approach in Maastricht, and I guess I sticked around for quite some time. That was never really the plan, but that's how it turned out.
So now you have to leave after your PhD, because that's kind of the American system, right?
Yeah, that's true, but I'm also very excited. So Maastricht was great for now 10 years. I mean, in between I was also in Canada, Luxembourg, and then now the US for half a year. And now it's time to say goodbye to Maastricht, move on to the next chapter.
Is that obligatory now?
I think so, but I also want to.
No, I can imagine. But before that, it was quite kind of difficult because the market is pretty small. Huh?
Yeah, the market is indeed small. I'm going through that right now, but I think it's also for the university. They want to get fresh blood, different people with different backgrounds in. So I understand the system.
Yeah. Okay, well, I already said that your PhD study is about what makes audit partners in the team successful. Why do you mention the partners separately to start off with? Because you're part of the team, I hope.
Yeah, that is correct. So the partner is part of the team, and why we mention him separately. So that's not meant to signal that the partner is actually separate from the team. It just stems from the motivation of the research, and also the partner has the ultimate responsibility for the engagement in the team. So that's why we mention him separate, being he's the one, or he or she is the one that actually carries the ultimate responsibility. And that's also, so what got us interested in this research is we know a bit about partners. We never observe the actual team, right? In audit research, we base it on the data we have, and we know, audit quality, audit outcomes differ between partners, but we don't really know why that is the case. So there's been several studies on auditor demographics, education, gender, all of these experience, all of these factors show, they do explain variation in audit outcomes, but we don't but not a lot. So in statistical terms, the explained variance was very low. So we're like, okay, there must be something else why audit outcomes vary across individual partners and hence across teams. So that's why with this FAR project, we really wanted to dive deeper into behavioral factors, so leadership of partners and the whole team.
Yeah. Were you already studying this during your master phase, or?
No, my master, I had a different topic on auditor reporting. So that was also, you could see that differences between partners, firms, etc. arise. But this kind of started with the beginning of my PhD, that I got very interested in the behavioral aspect. So I've always been a fan of psychology. That was always, do I study business? Do I study psychology? And now I can actually combine it and do both in my research, which is great. So that's something that originated with Jerry and Anne.
Yeah, you already said something about it, the team functioning. Why is that so important?
Yeah.
And why didn't they spend more time on studying that before?
Yeah. So why is team functioning so important? It's the entire audit is eventually conducted by an entire team. So that multiple people come together, they work on tasks together, they do judgments together, and that ultimately affects what we think the audit outcome. And it hasn't really been studied because the data just hasn't been available. So we're normally constrained to what's available in terms of archival data or to experiments. And when it comes to archival data, we just didn't have any data. So now that we have the Foundation for Auditing Research, they give us access to what we usually call the black box of auditing. So we only observe the outcomes, like the audit opinion, audit fees. That's data that we can work with, but the whole audit process that is conducted by a team, we couldn't observe. And also in experimental work, there has been some studies on teams, but it's very difficult to have an actual team perform a task in an experiment. So that's why I think this research is very important in helping us understand what ultimately drives audit quality. And why is team functioning so important? So first we need the definition of a team. So if individuals all come together and just work on a task, that's not a team. So for a team to really be a team, so we call this a real team instead of a working group, is that we have this shared sense of working together. We have a joint goal that we want to contribute to. And this feeling of togetherness, that's something that needs to emerge. And that emerges through different, team dynamics. Am I committed to the team? The leader plays a very essential role in this. So that's why we focus so much on team functioning in our studies, to really understand, okay, when does this state of a real team emerge and how does this ultimately then affect the performance? So in short, team functioning is an antecedent of team performance, and we argue that team performance, and we also want to study this, if the team performs then better, in the end also the audit quality will be higher.
So, this makes me think about you have these individual performance assessments. Does that also exist for teams? Because you call it team performance, but that's pretty elaborate, I guess. I don't know what is mainly looked at and what could be looked at more, maybe.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we don't have really an archival measure of team performance besides the usual suspects of like team efficiency and also the audit outcomes that we look at, because that's in the end a function of what the team has been doing. When we study team performance in our study, it's assessed by the partner or the lead manager and also by the team themselves. So we ask, do you meet your deadlines? There's a lot of different scales coming from the organizational behavior literature that we borrow on this. So in the first study where we indeed have individual performance ratings, that's really assessed by the firms, but there is no real formal team performance assessment in the firms. And that was actually one of the recommendations that we also gave early on when talking to audit firms, that they need to have, it doesn't need to be formalized, like written down, but they need to have moments within the audit process where they come together and evaluate the functioning of the team.
Why doesn't that happen?
I think it does happen in part, and we can't really see it. So I'm sure they will come together, have a beer, have some pizza, and talk about the team. But I mean, the audit is stressful, so I don't know to what extent they spend a lot of time on these, what we in team science call very important steps to actually get to a team. So setting up a proper team, having like a team mission, all of these things we know from research are needed, but they're often neglected due to time pressure.
Yeah. Okay. You also look then at, to make it even more complicated,
Yes.
at partner manager dyads. I looked for the definition and I found that's a group of two people, which I kind of like. So maybe you can tell a bit more about that. Why is that so important?
Yeah. So you asked before, okay, why is the partner separate from the team? And that was just because the partner is a key leadership figure. And that has been studied a lot because of data availability. We focus on the partner. But if you talk to auditors and real-life audit teams, they will tell you, hey, there's not just one leader. There's actually multiple leadership functions within the team. So when it comes to team functioning, the leader actually plays a key role in ensuring that a team works well together. So in the audit, we actually have this dual leadership structure that's also recognized by the auditing standards, where they say, okay, the audit partner actually delegates part of his or her responsibility to a responsible engagement manager. Again, something that we don't observe from the outside, in most countries at least. So we only know, okay, there is a partner, he's signing, but there's an engagement manager. And we say, okay, it's actually the combination of the partner and manager that's so critical in leading the team, in making decisions within the team and ensuring that the team functions well, that we want to study how this dual leadership structure influences the team and the performance of the team. Mm-hmm. And that's a pretty unique setting, but it also applies to, consultancies have often the same system in place. So there's other contexts where you now see dual leaders. It's just in audit, it's very traditional that you have multiple leaders on the same team.
So maybe research has been done at consultants firms, maybe?
Not a lot.
No.
So it's kind of unique, and you see that in one of our papers, it's really focused on this dual leadership structure, where we just look at two specific, not jumping too much ahead, but we look at two specific leadership behaviors and then how these dual leadership structures work out. Because a lot of the research also in psychology and organization behavior has traditionally focused on one leader. Mm-hmm. And we don't know whether the things that we know about single leaders also play out in the dual leadership structure. Probably not, because, they also have to coordinate between each other. Yeah. So there's not a lot of research on this dyad, which again, for me and our team, makes it a very exciting topic to study. So
it could also end up in a management journal, maybe.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Or you sent me your job market paper. I don't know how you call that. What was it called?
The personality paper?
That was not the paper, it was this general document.
The research statement, Yeah,
you refer to an article by Mary Barth that's called A Learned Profession, the Role of Research.
Yeah.
So maybe you can tell a bit more about that, how you endorse her vision. Does she promote evidence-based auditing or evidence-informed auditing? Can you tell a bit more about it? Because that probably also relates to what you're doing.
Yes, 100%. So let me take a step back. So in her paper, and there's multiple papers on this, it's more opinion pieces.
This is part one.
There's multiple professors who were invited to talk about this. So this vision that audit accounting is a learned profession isn't new. So a learned profession generally refers to jobs where the connection between research and education is very strong, and that you need a lot of insights from research to inform education and the job. So traditionally, that's been like the study of law, medicine, theology, and now also engineering, where we say, okay, research, science really matters to drive forward the education. And there's been this call that accounting should be one of these learned professions as well. And what it ultimately indeed means that we have more science-based education, more insights into accounting, auditing, and that this drives the education of auditors, regulations, etc. And in this article by Mary Barth, which I think is a great piece, and that's why I really endorse that vision and I want to contribute to that going forward in my career, is that we need to have close collaboration between practice and science. So FAR is one of the few examples where this is actually possible, right? So also how this project evolved over time is us as the research team talking about the firms and asking like, what is problems that you're facing? How can we help? So having more science-based insights into the audit firms, into the audit, can ultimately help the audit firms to have higher audit quality, what they're striving for. So it's just an open call to, that's my interpretation, is her article is an open call saying, okay, we need to closer communicate with practice to solve real problems. And then also she talks a lot about communication back to academics, practitioners, so that we don't just sit in our ivory tower at university and do stuff that only we guys as academics like, but that we actually talk to the audit firms as well.
Does she have an idea about how to organize that? Does she come with examples? Or?
No, not really. It's more like she talks about 4 different points on how to get there, or how to get to this vision that accounting becomes a learned profession. And one of the key arguments is that you also communicate outside of academia. Yeah. And I think FAR is a great example for this.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, well, maybe you can tell a bit more about your dissertation, the structure maybe, and briefly the topics you're covering in the studies.
Sure. So I always, also when presenting at the FAR conference, I always use this framework to lay out, which essentially is my dissertation. And first, on the first level, we have, if you imagine the hierarchical structure of an audit team, like you have a partner, you have a manager, and then the engagement team. So in the first chapter of my dissertation, I look at the partner and the manager separately and look at their individual characteristics and how this affects their individual performance. So to understand, okay, why do we see differences in behavior, differences in outcomes across individuals? And I rely on OB and psychology literature to see, the role of personality is actually something that's quite important. So even if you control for mental ability or IQ, education, personality really matters for individual performance.
OB is organizational behavior.
Organizational behavior, yeah. So that's the first part, that I look at the personality traits of auditors and how this affects their performance.
Could you give an example of these traits?
Yeah, so for example, conscientiousness, so I'll use established models in psychology. So there's this normally seen as like the large 5 traits. And one of them is, for example, conscientiousness, which captures how diligent you are, how hardworking, your detail orientation, or extroversion, how extroverted you are. So those are some of the traits that I look at. And for example, extroversion is one that very positively affects performance. And also conscientiousness, if you think about the role of an auditor, right, being very detail oriented is a good thing. And we see that this really affects their technical skills. So that's something that we study in this first paper, is looking at the partner and the manager and their personality. And then next, we combine these two and say, okay, the partner and manager actually work together, and that's the dyad. So, and in that dyad, we first study, okay, who are these partners and managers that work together? And we leverage the theory of homophily, so that, likes alike, so that people prefer working with someone who is similar to them. And we study this to see, okay, does that also happen in the audit context? And we focus on working style, so which captures their leadership skills, commercial and technical skills, and to see, okay, if the partner and manager work together, are they more likely to be similar in those? And then in the next step, we see, okay, does this similarity then also affect the team? So there we link it back to the team functioning. So overall, the dissertation really first partner manager individually, then partner and manager combined, where we look at the dyad, and then the dyad formation, how this affects the team, and then one study that's specifically on the leadership.
Yeah. And then these dyads that people choose people who are like themselves. How did you come up with that idea? Did it also come from practice, or?
Yeah, so there is this theory of homophily. I always struggle with that word. It's a well-known sociology theory. So that came more from reading in the literature And of course, also talking to audit firms, but reading in the literature, there's a lot of evidence that documents the existence of homophily in all types of relationships. So in the closest, if you're looking at marriage, partners, relationships, in friendships, but also in work relationships. And there's also a lot of good things about this. You know, if you're alike, we're more likely to get along, coordination is easier, we think alike. So there's a lot of positive aspects on why that makes sense. But similarly, there could also be bad things, in quotation marks. So like groupthink. If we both have the same weaknesses, we like working together, but that doesn't automatically translate into a better functioning team. So this idea really came up with reading in the literature and learning more about the theory.
Yeah, okay. Did we cover all studies now?
There's a fourth, which is work in progress at the moment. So that one is going back to the individual level and looking at, so there we don't just have partners and managers, but also more senior staff, so junior staff. And there we look at whether the person organization fits. So do I fit on 3 dimensions? Does my personality fit the firm? Does my expectation for the organizational culture fit to the firm? And my identity, like my professional identity, do I strongly identify with the audit firm? And do these 3 aspects, so we refer to this as the person-organization fit, does this predict turnover intentions and performance within the audit firms? And that's kind of also answering one of the key problems the audit firms are currently facing is their huge turnover and that they have trouble attracting talent. So with this paper, we want to see whether we can actually predict who's going to perform well and who's going to leave the audit firm based on how well they actually fit to that particular audit firm.
Okay. So that will also be part of the dissertation?
Yeah.
So you need 4 studies then? Or?
No, I need 3.
Yeah.
And the one study that we talked about briefly with the dyad and the leadership, that's likely a management and OB paper. So I just have 1 extra, basically.
Okay. Well, what do you contribute to practice? That's one of the purposes of FAR as well, I guess.
Yeah.
What can a practitioner do with the findings?
Yeah.
That you have so far?
That we have so far, yeah. So the way I see it is that we have like different puzzle pieces that ultimately can help the audit firms in a more scientific way of managing their staff. So, for example, if I talk about the personality paper, so we study the personality of managers and partners, and we find that certain traits are positively associated with performance and some negative. So, for example, when you're very agreeable, which is, you care about others, you have a need for harmony, we actually find that this negatively impacts performance. And I think that can also make sense if you think about the work that an auditor does. It's a lot of confrontation, especially at manager and partner level, if you think about adjustments that need to be negotiated with the client. So you need to be willing to sometimes sacrifice harmony for having these negotiations. And one of the findings is that being too agreeable can hurt performance and can hurt this technical aspect of auditing. So what firms could do with this is at the moment they follow more like a one-size-fits-all training approach, but maybe certain people with certain personality traits need different training. So if I'm a very agreeable person, maybe I need more training also on having these conflicting situations, having tougher negotiations. So I think we document these different associations with the different personality traits, which can be used for, personalized training. It can also be used for, showing the audit firms that they maybe promote a very typical individual. So if we look at the partner level, the variance in personality traits is very low. There seems to be, across all 10 firms, so we work with 10 audit firms in the Netherlands, and across all of them, there seems to be a very stereotypical audit partner, which goes against their mission of increasing diversity in all ranks. And then when you talk to the firms, diversity for them is more than just having an equal gender split. It's having people with different opinions, different backgrounds. But then they seem to promote a very stereotypical person to the highest ranks. So I think these findings can also maybe highlight the audit firms of like, we don't know whether there's a bias in there, right? So it could be that we just promote people that fit into that profile, even though other people might do equally well. So I think just showing the audit firms also the personality profiles of their auditors at the top and talking to them about this and be like, and a lot of them didn't realize this, that there is still this very stereotypical partner. So I think that's another thing that we can contribute to the audit firms.
Are you aware of the fact that firms are picking this up in discussions? Or?
I mean, we are talking to the firms. Also, in 2 weeks, I will talk at Peter. Am I allowed to say the name?
Oh, I don't know.
I'm also not. So in 2 weeks, I'm giving a talk at one of the Big Four firms, starting with a P. I already said it. So I think they are picking this up, and also with the conference that the Foundation for Auditing Research is holding annually, they hear about these findings, and I do think they listen and are often very surprised, and then also have questions like, can we see the personality profiles at our firm, and how do we do compared to others? Which is, of course, not the purpose of our project, but I understand why they are interested in that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this kind of sums up the basic idea, I guess. Yeah. Did we miss something?
No, I just hope that also with the project on the dyad, so the partner-manager combination, that we can provide firms with insights there, because it's not just about the individual, right? It's about the partner and manager jointly leading the team. And I think those are things when we talk about the different leadership styles. I didn't go into detail there, but we consider like initiating structure versus personalized consideration, which are two different leadership styles. And the audit environment is typically very structured. So maybe this consideration-based piece, so giving individual feedback, individual consideration, is something that leaders can actually learn. And we really find in our study how important it is. And especially when you have this dual leadership structure, it seems that consideration is even more important, because, there also needs to be coordination between the partner and the manager. And if they harmonize, then also this can contribute to the team. So I really think that all these individual pieces that we have with the different studies can come in nicely to help the firms in a more scientific way.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Lena.
Yeah, thank you.